We begin a session today by leadership sharing the landmarks from Busan, South Korea, 10th Assembly of the World Council of Churches towards Karlsruhe, Germany, where the 11th Assembly of the World Council of Churches will be held. I would like to make a couple of comments in terms of what are some of the landmarks that we have seen along the way. My remarks will be threefold. First, I'll look at the movement, the ecumenical movement, in terms of member churches and the wider ecumenical movement. Secondly, I'll look at the programmatic issues. And thirdly, I'll look at governance. Let's just cast our minds back and remember that we met in Busan, South Korea, a peninsula that is still divided. We are moving to Germany, which was divided also, but thank God, and we celebrate the grace and the mercies of God that we now go back to Germany, a united country, a country that has really served, supported the ecumenical movement. This particular aspect, geographically, politically, economically, is critical because when we look at our theme, Christ's love, we are called to really rethink where the community is after many, many conflicts. In terms of the ecumenical movement, what we've seen between Busan as we move to Karlsruhe is a widening and a broadening of ecumenical dialogue. We have deepened our bilateral dialogues, which are intercommunion, but we have also broadened the number of groups that we relate to. For instance, the Pentecostal movement, the evangelical movement, we see a much more positive spirit since Busan. And finally, on this particular broadening of dialogue, we have seen also a deepening and a much more content-rich interfaith dialogue. The motto of Busan captures what I have just described, and that is, we are committed to move together. We moved together as member churches. We have moved together with other communions that are not related, like the Catholic Church. But more important, we have moved together with human communities, social movements in addressing justice issues. The pilgrimage of justice and peace has offered us a framework of relating. Busan invited men and women of goodwill, invited people of other faiths, invited Christians, member churches to journey together. And indeed, in the last 8 years, the pilgrimage of justice and peace has offered a strategic approach in terms of facilitating the coherence and in ensuring that issues that are clearly human-based, that affect the lives of people, are brought together. Still reflecting on the pilgrimage of justice and peace, it is the same strategy that it has offered in formulating the objectives, the program objectives of the World Council of Churches, programmatic objectives that are basically 4, if you want to put it 5, and these have guided our work. Let me just lift up a couple of issues on programs that, for me, from leadership perspective, do offer us food for thought and continuity. We have seen since Busan a much coherent, very active, very strong communication unit of the World Council of Churches, and particularly social media. People are able to follow the work, not only of the World Council as an organization, but of all communities, member churches, non-member churches. And this is because the unit of communication never before has been as strong, as active, as agile. And indeed, it is through this communication that during this pandemic, we've been able to keep together, to walk together, to pray together, and to work together. We saw that during the pandemic, which almost paralyzed the work of the World Council of Churches and many other organizations, we were so happy that through this department, we were able to connect with member churches. We were able to harness stories of hope, stories of resilience, stories of patience, stories of innovation. And as we seek to meet now and move to the 11th Assembly, I dare say that indeed the churches have proved their resilience. They have proved the need and the place for intergenerational support, dialogue, and fellowship, because it was the young people who supported the clergy, the elderly in churches to cope with the new technology, because technology has helped keep fellowship and keep community. And therefore, the place of technology during this period has been very, very critical. The place of technology, with all its lopsidedness, has helped to keep the fellowship alive, to keep the work of the council alive. Let me touch on the just community of men and women. Gender-based violence has been a global thing, but the World Council of Churches, through the Thursdays in Black movement, has been able to rob in other groups. For instance, the groups that started in America and other places that were secular, but working on the same issues of overcoming gender-based violence. For me, a programmatic issue that stands also very close to having some major landmarks is the just community of men and women. It has proved that together, men and women, we can overcome the challenges, the obstacles, the issues that generate unwanted and ugly violence. I then move on to the Mission and Evangelism Conference of 2018, held in Africa for the first time. It was very, very important that the place of mission and evangelism in the life of the council, in the life of the movement, remains a pillar, because it is through evangelism, it is through mission that we are able to change the lives of people. By accepting Christ as the Lord and Savior of their lives, a new lifestyle, a new community is formed, a new value system is formed, and thus transformative discipleship becomes central. The other programmatic area that has come up recently is overcoming racism, xenophobia. The demons of racism, the demons of xenophobia, the demons of division continue to dog humanity. And so this is a program that the Central Committee endorsed, and I think it's an important program as we continue. Let me finally look at the issues of unity. For me, what is important is having linked faith and order work with the pilgrimage of justice and peace, so that the theology that is now shared with us from the pilgrimage of justice and peace also is reflected in the work of unity, faith and order. To be more specific, I think it is important that PJP, that is Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace, intentionally decided to reflect theologically. This has been a landmark. This is not exhaustive of all programs, and I think we cannot, but as I finish, mention the place of Bose in the formation of future ecumenists, future leaders, and even though we have had the pandemic, again, Bose has been able to function to bring in students, gone all over to overcome the challenges. My final point is on governance, beginning with the Central Committee, which now used to meet 2 years instead of 18 months, was of course impacted by the pandemic. But thank God, most people understood the need for us to continue our work online. And the last meetings of the Central Committee were quite productive online. We have taken decisions online. And for me, this points towards a very positive direction. We are going to meet again online, unfortunately, because we had anticipated in-person meeting. And I'm sure we will have a fruitful Central Committee. Our Executive Committee has done many of its meetings, if not, except for one, online. Leadership has also done. Now, to conclude on governance, we have seen a spirit of coherence, teamwork, collegiality, support. I mean, personally, when it comes to the leadership of Central Committee, I can only but say it's been very collegial, it's been very consultative, very supportive of each other, and together with the presiding bishop of the Church of Norway, who was then the General Secretary, and now with the acting General Secretary, Father Sauka, I mean, we've worked very well. And I want to thank God and wish that the next leadership after Karlsruhe will have the same ambience, the same spirit, because I, as a moderator, have been greatly supported. Looking back to Busan, the theme for us now is so relevant because the pandemic is divided people. The pandemic has exacerbated some of the conflicts that were there, and hence the theme of Christ's love moves us to reconciliation and unity. To me, it is divine, it is timely, and it sums up all our programs. Thank you so much. Let us meet in Karlsruhe.